Well, I managed to sell my pottery business after 7 or 8 years of running it, and it took me overseas to Vietnam because I sold it to a furniture company. The company was Theodore Alexander, and they manufacture fine furniture, principally for the States. It took me overseas for 12 months, and I simply moved from designing for interiors to designing for exteriors. And I found out that the material I wanted to use was iron and steel. I started making some furniture, and it began from then. By that time, I'd made some great friends, and I was just overwhelmed by the skill of the Vietnamese, and I started working with my good friend Hai. And the first thing we made was a bandstand, which is a ridiculous project because it's far too ambitious. But this is the wonderful thing about Vietnam. We worked on it, we made it, delivered it in England, and it was sold to a Japanese buyer. So it went all the way back across the world, and by that time happened, I was in business. Okay, it was quite shaky to begin with because I had to think of a lot of speculative designs and then go and approach customers and sell them. And so I was asking Hai to make things for which there were no customers. And so for the first couple of years, it was difficult because it took me a while to work out what was saleable. But after a while, there was some logic to it. I worked out the best way to manufacture things, what designs are most popular, and the business grew from there. The situation is that there's a massive gulf between the artist blacksmith and the steel fabricator here in England, and I'm trying to plug that gulf. I'm trying to make work on a commercial scale, which is the work of an artist. A lot of the work is for bespoke gates because the finest gates are tailor-made to a given situation. For example, a customer will approach me and say, okay, I've got a driveway that's 10'6" and the walls are 9 foot high and the style of the house may be Edwardian. What have you got? And we have to design to that criteria. A recent request I've had is for an 11.5 metre rose tunnel, and that's a beautiful structure inspired by the original at Trentham Gardens. Then I make summer houses and bandstands, some very special furniture to match certain situations in gardens. For example, I've just designed a curved bench that fits neatly in one particular part of the garden. The most important service we offer is the design element, which would involve freehand sketches, visiting the site, surveying the site, preparing a photo montage of the design in situ, and helping you with your planning application. We can also provide tailor-made models, for example, heraldic shields or special cast iron sections specific to the design. Okay, my inquiries usually come via the internet. I'd always ask a customer to look at the internet because that's got my complete catalogue on it and it's updated regularly. I have a phone call or an email. I get back to the customer with images. I can help with a photo montage. I can visit the customer, and then after 3 months or so, once we've agreed the design, the deposit's paid, the ironwork's delivered and possibly installed by myself, my team, or the customer. Okay, yeah, there are certain practicalities you have to take in mind. For example, there's the safety issue. You might want to be able to get a fire engine through the entrance. Also, the way that the cars approach a gate is also important. If your vehicle approaches directly, then you can go for a narrower opening. However, if you're turning a corner when you approach the gate, you're going to have to try and go for a wider width so that you don't clip the ironwork when you're turning into it. Current needs for a gate, for example, have changed, and this is why it's ideal to have a gate tailored to your requirements. For example, old gates were usually 9 foot or 10 foot width, and ideally you should be looking at a 12 foot width gate now in order to get your vehicles through without damaging them or the gate. But you should speak to the planning authority to see about the height of the gate and the design of the gate, because sometimes you'll have to submit an application to make sure it's accepted by the local authority. We don't use any hollow section, and we don't use any catalogue components. One of the problems with some other manufacturers is that you can construct a gate using parts from a catalogue. You look through the catalogue, select on your barley twists, your spears, put them on the concrete floor, zip them up with some hollow section, spot weld them, and hey presto, there's your gate. It looks absolutely appalling. We don't use any catalogue sections or components whatsoever. Everything is tailor-made. Well, in Vietnam, we don't use tubular section, we don't use catalogue components, we only use hot roll steel, and it's put together with incredible skill. Hey presto, we get a beautiful result. It's got to be about design. When the design's right, you just make beautiful stuff, and it comes naturally. So yes, design is the most important element of the whole process. There's a lot of research, yeah.
And how do you approach that?
It's quite difficult actually, because using old photographs is often inadequate, because the photographer from 100 years ago is photographing the building, so you can barely make out what ironwork is there, and then the situation usually means that the ironwork's gone because it was stripped during the war. So what I've got to do is sometimes make inquiries in the local area for related designs, and also go through libraries and seek out designs that are appropriate for the building, and also examine the site too. For example, you can sometimes see the sections that are still in the top of the walls of railings, for example. But there's not a lot of good ironwork left in the UK. It was destroyed during the war. So the important thing to me is the design, the execution, the skill, and the craft. That's the essential nature of the business. I think it's also about fun, because I love going to Vietnam. I love working with these other craftsmen, really skilled men, and creating something unique. Ironwork, it's a fun area. And it should be. You should be able to see it in the result. Vision for the future, we just want to make better and better work, and leave it scattered around the country, where it will remain for decades, hundreds of years, and it will be a little stamp of Peter Weldon Iron Designs, a stamp of excellence, which is what the UK used to have before it was all ripped out during the war.